Hello, I'm Ashley Lacey, and I'm a graduate student at Antioch University in the Couple and Family Therapy program. And I'm also part of the legislative committee at WAMP. And I've got a couple questions for you. It's delightful to be with you today.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I've been excited about getting more involved in the work, but I've also wondered, there's been this pull for me toward advocacy, but I don't really know why or how. And so I'd like to ask, as a graduate student, why should I be excited about or involved in the work that you're doing in Olympia?
I think there's two reasons to get involved. Understanding that, students have multiple pools on their life. You're in school, you're trying to manage your family, trying to have a little bit of downtime. But I think it's really important for people to understand why advocacy is so important from various levels. For a student, for instance, say in a year the Department of Licensing said, no longer students do you get X amount of hours before you can be credentialed, you get Y number of hours, you have to be doing Y number of hours. That would be a big shift for those of you who are already enrolled in school, operating to a plan to be credentialed and licensed by the state. Well, that's where advocacy comes in. We work really hard with the agency to say, well, wait a minute, why do you need more hours? Do you really need more hours? How can we ensure that the hours are appropriate? So advocacy comes in a lot of different ways, but it's really, really important that folks are out there advocating for what they're going to spend their life doing. Mm-hmm. If you want to have something work, and you as students know how it works for students, be that voice. Come to Olympia and help educate the legislators as to why the system is working the way it is or what changes need to be made. Legislators are average people just like you and me. They put their pants on one leg at a time. They have day jobs, they have families, they have multiple issues in their own life that they're dealing with. They are not experts in every field. They require and ask of us as advocacy groups and as lobbyists to help bring those experts to the table. And you as students are the only ones who can understand that credentialing licensure path that you're on. I can't speak to it without you. I'm just your voice temporarily while you're not in Olympia. It is much more powerful for the legislators to hear from you directly. And my job is to get you to Olympia, to make you comfortable to speak up.
Talk more about that. Us coming to Olympia?
Yeah, I always welcome all the WAMP members to come to Olympia. This year we had members of the board, members of the legislative committee come down. We spent a day running from meeting to meeting, and I will tell you, we run from meeting to meeting. Every block is 15 minutes, and we are booked back to back to back to back, and you are running all day. But it's important for the legislators to hear from you directly, to understand what it is you're going through and why something needs to change and how you can be a part of that. Like I said, I'm only a piece to the puzzle. I'm someone they see every day. I don't live everywhere in the state, so having a legislator from Everett hear from a student who lives in Everett and wants to practice in Everett, the challenges of delivering care in that community is really important for them to hear from that. And that's why I think students need to advocate.
Okay.
And you're advocating for a population of folks who maybe don't know how to advocate for themselves. And I think, honestly, I think as mental health professionals, we have a duty and an obligation to help make sure that the care that we're delivering, regardless of the city size, regardless if you're rural or urban or suburban, that it's being delivered adequately every day in every which way that it can happen. But if you as students don't stand up, or as professionals we don't stand up to help define that, we have to rely on legislators who are doing the best that they can do. But like I said, they're not professionals. They have multiple other jobs that they're attending to every day. So we always like to say we're an inch deep and a mile wide. But you, on the other hand, as a student, you are 10 miles deep and you understand the nuances, and that's where we need you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it gives me a sense just hearing you of, at Antioch we talk a lot about how do we do advocacy work, how do we not only take care of ourselves but our clients, and this could be one way to do that. It's really effective.
I think going back to the conversion therapy bill, there was not a lot of individuals who were willing to speak up about their process and how that exposure changed their life, in good or bad. It really took WAMP members and multiple other association groups and advocacy groups to stand up and say, this is why I don't believe in it clinically. This is why I don't believe in it from a mental health perspective. If we didn't have those individuals and those professionals standing up and saying why it wasn't appropriate, the legislators would have had to rely on other information. But you guys as professionals, as credentialed professionals were able to say why that we needed to ban that bill, and because of that, we did ban it.
Thank you. Now, as therapists, why to get involved is probably similar, but it might be a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's similar, but once you're licensed, it's a little bit different because you now have to work within the paradigm and the rules and regulations set forth by the state. So when the state says we want to change regulation that really impacts the licensed field, that's where we need the professionals to stand up. For instance, when the Volk decision was rendered and handed down from the courts to the legislature saying professionals have a duty to warn others, that changed the scope of practice for a lot of professionals. As a student, you may not have dealt with that as the risk to your license. You were probably learning about it and having to understand how would you practice under it. But as a current practitioner, having to change almost overnight how you deliver care, and the duty to warn was a very large grasp of changing how we inform individuals and what is the appropriate protocol and maintaining confidentiality.
Right.
So that's where I think professionals have a different nuance to advocacy than students, because it changed almost overnight for them. And that was, if you failed to do your duty to warn, it was a very large repercussion that you were going to be held accountable for. But we were able to, again, work with other associations, the legislature, in trying to define how to implement that.
Right, so not only staying plugged into what is going on and what's changing, but yeah, being a part of that change. Okay.
You know, one of the task force that WAMP works on is the suicide within the agricultural industry. There was a lot of concern about why are these individuals seeking services, or are they not seeking the appropriate services? And WAMP was asked to participate on a task force to really look at why is suicide so high in the agricultural industry. And I am not a professional. I am not a licensed WAMP credentialed professional. I am clearly just your conduit of information from association members to legislators, and my job is to really bring everybody together in the same room and discuss that. But when we were looking at the suicide task force, one of the things that WAMP members said is, we may not know either, but guess what? We need to figure out who would know. And we had some really good folks participating in that, and it was those professionals who said, who else do these people identify with daily? And that's how we realized, like, maybe we need to include the farmer's bank, because most likely if they're going into financial crisis, guess who they're going to see the most? Their banking institution.
Right.
So we were able to say, okay, how do we take licensed professionals in these smaller communities and align them with the bankers in that community and say, if you feel someone in distress, we're here to help you. I would not have known that. I would not have known that from anything, but because we had WAMP members there saying, well, wait a minute, why can't I work with a banker? Because they are gonna see it first. We were able to change it.
Great, and it sounds like working with WAMP, you're able to navigate in a way that is much more powerful than.
There is power in numbers when it comes to advocacy. I think having an association that's organized like WAMP, we have a very strong board, we have a very strong legislative committee, which empowers me to empower them, and it's a really good team of people who work really well. I would love to see more people get involved. I think it's really important for everyone within a professional association to be involved, understanding you may only have 5 minutes one week, but you might have an hour the next week. We'll take whatever we can get, but it's really important that we stick together and we keep growing, because if we don't, people will change our field without us being at the table. If we're not there, it will be done to us. And right now we're really strong.
Right. So it's not, it's a matter of how do we want to do it, not when, because it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Other question, you've talked about this a little bit and I'm starting to get a feel for it, but what as students, or how do we help you with this work? Are there more specific actions that we can take? What would support you?
I would love more support. One, like I said, I am just the conduit of information. I want to understand, as you as students coming through the process, regardless if you're the first day student or if you're like the day before graduation, I need to understand the barriers that you're facing with getting through that educational program. If there is a barrier that doesn't allow you to get through the process, is that a barrier that we can't overcome? Is it a rule? Is it a regulation? Is it a statute that needs changed? Like, do we need to redefine a scope of practice in some way to make sure more people are coming through? I don't know that. I don't live the day-to-day challenges of waking up and getting through, your clinical series. That's just not me.
Right, yeah.
But if you don't speak up and say, wait a minute, can we change this to make it better? That's where we can do it.
Thank you. It feels great to hear. Sometimes as a student, me personally, I feel like there's not a lot I can do to shift or change or even impact what my school at the state level, it seems really overwhelming.
It does, but that's why you're a part of WAMP, and that's where I come in. And WAMP has said it's an important to the association to have a lobbyist, to have somebody on the day managing that ground game every day. I watch every bill, we scan every piece of legislation. I'm in constant communication with the board members, with the legislative committee. We are constantly discussing, will this piece of legislation affect us or not? But it's also when the board gets together, they have really robust, meaningful conversations about how do they ensure that the safety of the patients that they're serving is being held at the highest regard at the licensure level. Do we need to change something? And it can be a very small change and a very big change, but a lot of bills in Olympia originate from a single person speaking up.
All right.
It happens.
All right. I believe you. You've seen this work. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking with me
Thank
about
you.
this and talking with us.
Yes.